So what do we have here? We have the model for the widget object, right? This is the widget object, and you have the topic having many widgets, correct? So we want this widget to be stored in a database. Okay? Let's see, in the database we currently don't have widgets. Yes? Let's see, let's hover. Let's refresh this, and the table has no tables whatsoever. And we should be able to just close this. Don't save this. Apply, what? Okay, go away. Close this. What? Close tab, yes, close, don't save. Oh my goodness. Of course. So while that's opens up, let's see, localhost. Close this, don't save. Close, okay, excellent. All right, so there's no tables, there's nothing there right now. Let's create our very first table. But we don't want to do SQL, right? We don't want to handle SQL whatsoever. So instead, we're going to use the JPA library. We're going to annotate this as an entity, right? And that's part of the javax.persistence.entity, not org.hibernate.annotations.entity. It's the persistence one. There we go. Also, we're going to handle this ID. This is going to be our primary key in the relational database. So we're not going to be generating it. Instead, we're going to delegate that to the database. Right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to annotate this as being a primary key. Right? That annotates this as a primary key. And we're going to delegate the value of this ID to the database. We're going to say, database, you do an auto increment, right? You increment 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, right? So to do that, we're going to annotate it as a generated value, and there's several strategies depending on your vendor. There's Oracle, for instance, uses sequences, right? And SQL Server and MySQL, you can do auto increment and identity, and it can calculate for you the next unique identifier. So there are various strategies that you can configure. And for now, we'll use the identity strategy, which is, in MySQL, is an auto increment. Okay? All right, and we're not going to use this ++ anymore. All right, let's see, what else? We have a constructor, we have the title, ID, excellent. So we can restart the server here. And as that restarts, it should parse this entity. And notice that you saw there, right? There was a create table widget. See that? Right? It parsed the entity annotation and says, you need a table for this, right? And by default, the name of the table will be the name of the class. But you can override that. You can override that by providing the actual table name that you want. Right, table, and then say name, and say widget table or something, whatever. Right? You can override that. We're not going to override it. We're going to stick to the default naming convention, which is fine. And okay, let's see what it chose for us. It chose for ID. It used the same label for the name of the variable, and title for that. And declared ID to be the primary key, and notice that it made auto increments for the ID. If we refresh the MySQL, you'll notice that there is now a table in there, the widget table. See that? And if we select, notice that currently it's empty. There's nothing in there. Right? There's nothing in there, but it has the two fields we were expecting. Right? There was no need for us to create it. JPA created it for us. Everybody good? All right. So let's create a couple of widgets here. So let's call this widget 1, 2, 3, and then widget 2, 3, 4. And we'll apply this, and there will be two widgets inserted. Okay, so now we have those two widgets. One of the things that we would like to be able to do is retrieve these widgets from our service, right? So that we can display them in React. Okay. So let's see if we could do that. Let's expose the data that we've just created. We can do that by generating what is called a repository. A repository is going to provide a generic endpoint to be able to talk to any table. Right? So to talk to any table, there are basically 4 operations that we really need. Right? We need to be able to create, insert. Right? We need to be able to select, retrieve data. We need to be able to update, and we need to be able to delete. Those are the only 4 operations. Right? So there's a generic class that implements these generic operations for us. Right? We just need to be able to configure it and tell it, hey, it's widget. It's the widget table that we want to interact with. Generate for me all the commands that we need for those 4 basic operations. Okay? So to do that, right, we're going to create a repository for each one of these objects. But let's get started with widget, because that's the one we have so far. So let's create a brand new one. So let's say new class, and we're going to put all the repositories under a repositories package, and this will be the widget repository. And there it is. And I always forget, it's not a class, actually. It's an interface, meaning we're not going to implement it. Right? Instead, we're going to use a generic implementation that already implements this for us. We don't want to have to rewrite this. Right? It's such a common set of use cases. We don't want, there's no need for us to rewrite it from scratch. So instead, it's going to implement a class that already implements this. It's the CRUD repository, CRUD, right? Create, read, update, and delete. That has all those 4 basic operations. And notice that it's asking us to configure it. What is it that you want me to create, read, update, and delete? I want you to create, read, update a widget. Okay. That's not it. Do we have widget? Widget. Yeah, it's widget Java. Why are you giving that import? Yeah, that one. I don't know why I was choosing that. Oh, it was ID. ID was trying to. It also asks what is the type of the primary key. The primary key is an integer, so I'm going to choose integer. Okay? All right, that's it. And we're going to leave this empty. We're not going to implement it. If it's within those 4 basic operations, right, we don't have to write anything here. If we fall outside of those 4 basic operations, something very special, here we would implement, not actually implement, but create a function that would stand in place of that operation that we want to select. Retrieve widgets, I don't know, by a particular order, or widgets that were created in a particular condition, whatnot. We would implement here. Right? We don't really need any of that. So I'm just going to leave this empty. Okay? All right, excellent. So this will implement our basic data operation, data access. So let's go back to our widget service. In our widget service, we have this generic find widget for topic. Let's leave that for a second. For now, let's focus on starting to replace this. Right? We want to replace it, but let's leave that because the client is based on this API. I don't want to break the client. Right? So instead, let's focus on some of the more generic operations. For instance, I'd like to be able to retrieve all the widgets. Find me all the widgets. So let's do that. So I would like to be able to do something like a public list widget, and then find all widgets. Okay. So to implement that, we're going to be using that repository we just wrote. That one already implements all this. So let's auto wire in here. So auto wired, and let's load the this repository. What do we call it? Widget repository. There it is. Widget repository. And the widget repository, if we do a dot, you'll see all the functions that it implements for us already. For instance, count. Tell me how many widgets there are. That's a very useful use case. There's remove a widget. There's remove all of them, like truncate. Remove all the records. There's delete. If I know the ID of the widget I want to remove, I can pass it in here and remove that particular record. I can see if it exists. Retrieve all of them. That's the one we want. Find all. Find all. And we're going to return that. It's complaining because what it returns, it's a generic type. Right? So we need to cast it specifically to list widget. So we're going to cast it. There we go. All right, and let's restart this. Let's restart that. Oh, it's going to blow away my 2 widgets. What do we got? Yeah, drop table, right, if it exists. If you do an update, it won't drop it. Right? It'll change it, it will update it, but not drop it. If we go back and we refresh, they're gone. All right, it's fine. So let's create this again. So W1 and W2 and W3. Let's apply, and this time I'm just going to copy this insert, and I'm just going to put them here just in case. All right? There we go. If I've accidentally remove it, they'll be there for me to just copy and insert them again. All right, excellent. So ideally, that data is there already. Let's apply, close it. And presumably, the API is up and running. Okay? So we should be able to hit it. It says with the API we chose. What was it? I forget. We didn't give one. Thank you. So let's map it to get mapping. We should always prepend it with a token with a namespace and say that we want all the widgets. There we go. We want all the widgets. Also, so that I don't drop my table again, I'm going to go over my resources and I'm going to say not create, but I'll say update. Okay? And this works pretty good. It gets stuck sometimes when you have foreign keys and it needs to drop a table that has data in there that children have foreign keys back to that record, and it doesn't know which order to drop them. Okay, so sometimes it fails, so you need to help it. Go in the database and do it yourself. Sometimes you just have a script that will just recreate this. That's more likely what will happen. In a development environment, you'll typically have a script that recreates the database for you, at least for development purposes, and put it in a particular state for you to do your test, your development. But let's play around with. Let's see how far we can do this. We can use the default behavior. Okay, so let's try it again. Let's what did it call it? API widget. It's not up again yet. There we go. Okay, so we have widgets. Right? We have widgets. We have IDs that were generated automatically for us in W1, W2, and W3. Everybody good? All right, that was pretty easy, right, to retrieve data from a database. Now let's go to the React side. Right? We want to go back to the React side and see how far we can start using this. This new API, right?